A very good morning to you all, and if you are participating from another time zone, a very good afternoon or good evening. This is a session focusing on the IB Diploma Program's Theory of Knowledge course. The theory of knowledge is about two different components, one called the general essay about knowledge, and there is an exhibition according to the new specification, the first teaching of which is taking place in September this year, and the first assessment will be next year in 2021. The greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge, says a sociologist. And the theory of knowledge course really is about distinguishing between the two. It also helps students become more aware of how information can be separated from knowledge, how knowledge is created through collaboration, connection, and communication, what kind of evidence is required to validate what they know, and who can be called an authority on a particular subject. It also helps students understand how to develop their knowledge skills and what areas they can look at for help with this. So, what is theory of knowledge? It's an inquiry into the nature of knowledge, where it actually comes from, whether it's an illusion or reality, how we know what we know, how are our perceptions formed, whether our perceptions are influenced by our culture, religion, environment, by other people, whether our perceptions are informed by our past, and an appreciation of the diversity of those perceptions. So, the basic tenet of this course is how is knowledge constructed? And if we make assumptions while we are constructing knowledge, what is the process that we go through? So, what is the role of assumptions in this process? The essay questions are something to the effect of: to what extent are areas of knowledge shaped by their past? Consider with reference to two areas of knowledge. So, students are required to identify two areas within the broad categories given to them, provided by the course. There are prompts there for them, and the course book that we'll talk about as this session progresses gives them a very good idea of how to hone in to their areas of interest. And so they will analyze and critically reflect on the requirements of two specific areas of knowledge and talk about how knowledge is informed in those areas, how it can be constructed through a process and developed further through evidence, examples, or arguments. Another example would be: there's no such thing as a neutral question. Evaluate this statement with reference to two areas of knowledge. If there's no neutral question, how do we know which side of the argument we're on? And how do we defend our argument? A large part of this course pertains to debate and discussion and helping students learn to defend their opinion or their arguments. The assessment procedures measure analyzing and presenting information, evaluating and constructing arguments logically and in a cogent and precise manner, and solving problems creatively. The basic skills that students will learn from this course are retaining knowledge, understanding the key concepts within these broad areas of knowledge, and applying standard methods of validating that knowledge. The assessment is based on an essay, which is 1,600 words, and an exhibition, which is about 950 words of explanation, which includes references and citations. The exhibition is typically taught in the first year through a linear approach, where they look at the core theme first, and then students are encouraged to add on the two optional themes and then choose from a broad variety of 5 different areas of knowledge to work with. And these prompts are given to them internally. The exhibition itself is internally assessed, but externally moderated, and we will talk about this a bit further through the session. The essay is 1,600 words based on a conceptual analysis of knowledge, and the guidelines that students get from their tutors are based on a lot of critical reflection, analysis, debate, discussion, and of course, working with each other. These are both individually done by students. So there is really no, apart from preparation, there's really no group work involved in this. No two students in the same class can work on the same object during their exhibition. So everyone has to choose an object of their choice, 3 objects actually of their choice, and do this individually. The pedagogy involved is the identification of knowledge. What area of knowledge are you really looking at from the internal prompts provided? And then the treatment of that knowledge. What do we do with it? How do we study it? How do we analyze it? And how do we take it further? What can we say about it? How can we contextualize it and link it to our daily life experiences? So as you can imagine, there are lots and lots of questions that students would have to answer to develop these areas of knowledge, make connections with what they already know, so dig deep into their prior knowledge and then take it further, question themselves repeatedly to further the concept that they are studying and explore different perspectives. There are case studies in the course that help students link what they're learning to real life experiences with the aim of helping them learn problem-solving skills and creative thinking ability, as well as critical reflection on what they are studying. This is done within the big question framework, which we'll come to in a second. The guiding questions that students will look at is, what do we want to know about this particular topic that they've been given, or an internal assessment prompt as it's called. What do we know about this and how do we know this? They're encouraged to ask as many questions as they can. They're encouraged to learn research tools and how to back up their research with evidence which is qualitative as well as quantitative. And how do they go through a peer facilitation process where they learn from each other? The approach that we follow to teach this course is linear, largely linear, where students are introduced to a core theme of knowledge, basic conceptual skills. How do they conceptualize the idea of knowledge? This core theme is knowledge and the knower. And then that's followed by 2 optional themes that they must choose from that they can study, and 5 areas of knowledge that they will broadly look at. Then they're required to make connections between the themes and arrive at a set of questions that they want to answer as they go through the course. So there is no examination at the end of the course. The first year is dedicated to the preparation of the exhibition, and the second year is about preparing for the essay with the help of tutors and their peers. The knowledge framework is broadly categorized under scope, perspectives, methods and tools, and ethics. The nature, the extent, and the limitations of knowledge are looked at closely, and how it can relate to their real life experiences. How does it relate to what they already know about the world? How does it enhance their connection with the world? And then they study perspectives, the role of cultural and historical contexts in which they might be influenced. Methods and tools of research are very important. They come from traditional tools. They could also be a conceptual framework within which they study their questions. It could be pertaining to technology or particular formulae that they might apply, or a statistical analysis to validate the research that they do. And of course, ethics, the implications and responsibilities of knowing, not knowing, and applying knowledge in the real world. What is it that we really need to take care of while we're exploring knowledge? And how can we focus on things that are contestable? What do we do about controversial knowledge? How do we support what we know through arguments and research? What is the big question framework? We've got these categories: connections, authority, perspectives, purpose and value, and development. And the questions that are given to the students are framed in this context: the ways of knowing in areas of knowledge, how do we conceptualize knowledge, and how do we apply it to real life situations? What makes someone an expert knower? When they say, I'm an authority on this, or I specialize in this, what does that really mean? What do they know about that particular area of specialization that makes them an authority? Is our understanding of the world determined by our perspectives, or are there other things that determine what we think about or how we think? How do we assess the value of what we know? How do I know if my knowledge is an illusion? Or how do I know if I'm misinformed? How do I know if my knowledge can be externally assessed by someone and validated as knowing? How do I develop my knowledge over time? How do I question what I know? So those are some of the questions that students will be asked throughout the course. The exhibition is a new assessment according to the new specification. It's inspired by the British Museum's History of the World in 100 Objects. Students are required to choose different objects. Again, no two students can choose the same objects for their exhibition, and there is no group work allowed for this. But for the exhibition, each student must choose 3 different objects and relate it somehow to a real world context. They also have to justify why they've chosen these particular objects to study and how they might inform their knowledge of the world. They would be required for a clearly stated internal assessment prompt. They're given questions and they must choose their objects and relate it to the question given to them, their chosen question. And then images of 3 selected objects are required. They must be interlinked as well, so they've got to tell a story. And that story must have a common thread between the 3 objects, or a pattern, as it were. The commentary that's required would be about 950 words, describing each object, its justification for inclusion in the exhibition, and its real-world context. And of course, references and citations are necessary for this exhibition. The approach and assessment to it would involve choosing, firstly, at the outset, choosing the internal assessment prompt. So choosing the question amongst the many given to the students, and then they would link that question to the objects that they want to select for the exhibition. The next step is to justify the inclusion of the objects. So they will be required to contextualize it within a real life context. And that in itself is a problem that they must solve before they go on to preparing the documents for moderation. Those documents include a 950 words write-up about the object itself, interlinking the ideas within the realm of knowledge that they have chosen. And then finally, they will showcase the exhibition internally to their colleagues and their teachers. The internal assessment, the theory of knowledge exhibition, makes up 35% of the weightage of the grade. It assesses the student's ability to demonstrate how theory of knowledge manifests materially in the world around us. What do the objects say about the world around us is largely the context of this exhibition. How do they link us with our past, and how do they inform the future? The external assessment, which is the theory of knowledge essays, is 65% of the grades, and that engages the student in producing an essay which focuses on the areas of knowledge given in the prompts. Under 6 prescribed titles, the student must respond to one of those titles. Usually they're given about 35 such prompts to select from, which is quite a broad selection. And the examples of the exhibition internal prompts are, to what extent is certainty attainable? Are some types of knowledge less open to interpretation than others? What challenges are raised by the dissemination and communication of knowledge? Can new knowledge change established values and beliefs? How does knowledge help us evolve? How does knowledge help societies evolve? That really is the broadest way of looking at these prompts, the evolution and development of knowledge, and how the past is linked to the present and the future. So those are some of the examples of exhibition prompts that students might be given. The overview of the textbook is this theory of knowledge textbook really does focus on each area individually with comprehensive guidance for students and tutors. It's developed in cooperation with the IB to provide a complete match to the new specification. The author team, Maria Dang and Arvin Dang, are experienced IB, they're an experienced IB team. Maria is an international educator and has served as a theory of knowledge coordinator, and Arvin is an experiential educator and an IB teacher. The book includes a print course book, online course book, and a print and online course book, of course, for digital access anywhere, anytime. If you look at the different components of the book, so the first teaching is in September 2020, and it's between the diploma program is for students between the ages of 16 and 18. That's the curriculum overview for you. If you have any questions or comments at any point, please feel free to put them down in the chat box, and we will take them as we go along. There will be some time for Q&A at the end of the session as well. So why did we publish this resource, and what is it about this resource that sets it apart from our competitors? It provides full coverage of the new specification and its elements. It gives you a very close connection to the different components and takes the students step by step through the process of understanding, preparing, and producing their coursework. There's a conceptual lens with scope, perspectives, methods, and tools. There are themes. So there's a core theme, knowledge and knower, that everyone has to look at first. So that's what really the course starts off with, the core theme. And then everything else, the broad categories of knowledge, are linked to this core theme. And then there are these optional 5 themes to choose from: knowledge in politics, knowledge in technology, knowledge in religion, knowledge in indigenous societies, and knowledge and language. And they, of course, incorporate the new exhibition assessment, which will come from within these categories as well. They provide a resource that enables the development of critical thinking skills, of peer facilitation, ideas for debate, discussion, and they have real-world examples in the form of case studies which are given in this book, so students can conduct all their research as using this book as a sort of one-stop shop. Coverage of new theory of knowledge includes whole chapters on the core theme and 5 optional themes. So each chapter is dedicated to an optional theme. Students don't really need to go through the entire 5 themes at one go. They can break it up into different chapters and study it closely and separately. So chapter 1 would be, for example, knowledge and knower, and then we've got the second chapter, which 3rd chapter, 4th. So the next 5 chapters are based on the optional themes, and then further down, chapters 7 to 11 would have the areas of knowledge and the broad framework that students will be studying. There is also focus on assessment, so that students get to know exactly how to approach their essay and how to approach the exhibition. That is chapter 12 of this book. So how do students prepare for the theory of knowledge assessment? Well, they've got guidelines, they've got support in the same book. The assessment is not only explained, the big questions are given, the step-by-step approach of developing and demonstrating their ability to construct their arguments in a logical and cogent way, engaging with different perspectives, drawing conclusions about what they've learned, and being able to defend their work. These are steps that are given in the assessment chapter in chapter 12 of this book, encouraging higher order critical thinking skills throughout the chapters. There are also activities that are embedded in this book, hands-on activities for students to look at things that they can do with each other. And these are mainly geared towards critical reflection of what they're learning. The real world examples that are required by the questions that they must answer are given through case studies in this book, teaching problem-solving skills to students. You can see an example on the screen. It says, is good parenting universal? Now that is a fairly broad question, but the step-by-step approach in this book gives the arguments for and against and helps students go through it piece by piece to understand the concept and be able to break down their arguments through a critical thinking and critical analysis process. The key concepts are pointed out in these little rectangular boxes given, where students are encouraged to focus on certain aspects of the chapter for discussion and debate and build their arguments based on it. The assessment chapter also discusses how effectively to apply those key concepts that are given in these focus boxes, how to interpret what they already know, at what point can they say, I am certain about what I know. So what is certainty as opposed to controversy? And how does the student learn to justify their argument? How do they learn to justify what they know? The key messages from this book are children will develop lifelong thinking skills. So the Theory of Knowledge course is not just a course which enables children to pass the IB Diploma program. It is a skill for life, and it has spillover benefits for other areas and of their lives, for other subjects, and the benefits last way beyond their academic life. It provides an accessible and lively insight into this complex subject theory of knowledge. And it's also a very accurate match to the IB specifications. So students can't go wrong when going through this book with their step-by-step approach. There's extensive support for teachers to guide students as well. And here are the further links that you might want to look up if you're interested in knowing more about this book or more about this course. If you're a tutor who teaches this course, I would love to hear from you. So if you could put down your comments in the chat box or ask me questions if you'd like. And it would be nice to hear about your experience and the particular challenges that you might have faced while you teach this course. Some references for you to look at about the theory of knowledge. It's quite helpful, I would say. You might want to look these links up. We'll put them in the chat box for you as well. These will explain rather extensively and comprehensively what is required by the course and how teachers can guide students through it. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. I hope you found this session helpful.